Taking a look today at FabFilter's new Pro R. Now, anytime FabFilter comes out with anything new, of course, I'm interested. We're interested at the school. We use so much Pro L, Pro DS, Pro C2, Pro Q2, Pro MB. FabFilter is such a big part of our clean digital workflow that, of course, when they finally came out with a reverb, we wanted to see what it's all about. And I personally was very curious to see what it's all about. I think people often have problems with two main things we see at the school. One is compression and one is reverb. Compression because you have lots of different controls, attack, release, ratio, all this stuff, and it changes the shape of the compression, which takes a little while to understand. Reverb, the big problem here is that people often are scared to edit reverb. You know, they put on a reverb, they flip through the presets, they find a preset, and they adjust the send level or the wet dry mix, and that's it. And the problem with that is that you don't really get to focus and fine tune your reverb. And a lot of reverb controls historically have had lots of weird controls, bass multipliers, and all kinds of things that just seem too sciencey and too complicated. And I think it scared the average producer engineer from getting too crazy with the reverb editing. But fine-tuning your reverb is absolutely critical. And the best mixes and the best productions, they have some very tuned up reverbs that are custom adjusted to optimize that moment and that sound and that impact and that ambience. So with that in mind, and I can't tell you exactly what FabFilter was thinking, but I think they wanted to create a very user-friendly reverb that encouraged you to tweak it. And they put all of the knobs right in your face. There is nothing under the hood here. I think what's interesting about this design is not what they put under the hood, is what they actually put over the hood, if you will, or in your face, right in front of you. They're encouraging you to manipulate, tweak, adjust your reverb to make it really, really fit. Okay, you know, within the world of reverb, there's organic reverb like room mics. There's analog reverb like plates and spring reverbs. There is digital algorithmic reverb, which is the Lexicon line and Valhalla, stuff like that. And then there's convolution reverb like Altiverb, where they actually sampled spaces. This is not a convolution reverb, and there's a lot of chatter out there with these hybrid convolution reverb models, and people are going to start to perhaps improve upon what was really an industry standard, certainly for film. But this is not that. This is digital algorithmic reverb, which means that it's very, very fancy digital delay box. And of course, reverb is a phenomenon of delay, right? Delay is the mother of reverb. So you can create a reverb plugin using digital algorithmic reverb, which is what they've done here. So let's take a look at the controls, and then we'll give it a little test run, and we'll listen to it in context with a synth lead. The big knob is right here in your face. It's space in your face, and it goes from counterclockwise small to clockwise quite large, small rooms, medium rooms, small halls, large halls, up to cathedrals. So the space here, you can adjust and grab this, and you'll see that it gives you the decay setting in the center. Now, if you love the quality of the space and the size of the space and the tone of the reverb, but you want a longer or shorter decay, here, this control here allows you to fine tune the decay, right? From 100%, which is what it would default to with the space setting, to longer or shorter. So here's your decay adjuster here. And now let's jump and go left to right. Brightness defaults here to 50%, which is sort of the neutral setting. As you go clockwise, you get more brightness. As you go counterclockwise, you get darkness. It's a tone knob controller. It doesn't really say exactly what it is. My guess is it's some kind of tilt shelf. I don't think it has anything to do with adding high frequency harmonics or taking them away. I think it's simply a tilt EQ. That's my guess. It doesn't really say in the manual. Character setting goes from clean to chorus. And this, of course, is gives you control of the modulation that naturally occurs in reverb, but then you can really overemphasize it and take it to a very chorused place or have it be quite clean. And that's the character. The distance is a crossfader between the early reflections and the late reflections. So if you want to pull something into the front of the mix psychoacoustically, you're going to hear more early reflections. And as you sync something back into a room or a cathedral or a hall, you're going to hear that slow buildup of the late reflections. So this is a psychoacoustic slider that can put your sound source or whatever you're putting reverb on in the front, middle, or back. Super handy, right there, easy to use, quite simple, but that is sort of a traditional reverb control there. Stereo width, right, is wonderful to have it also right in your face. You can have a mono reverb, and mono reverbs can actually be quite interesting, and you can use them in all kinds of stereoizing ways. But most of life is stereo, right? Most ambient spaces in real life are stereo, and then you can push them to be super stereo, which will pull your ears wide, and you can fine tune it if it sounds too gimmicky. You can pull it back. The wet dry mix, of course, if you want to put it on the insert of an individual sound and wet dry mix it, that is, of course, legal. Most of the time at the school, we like to put things on the return tracks. It gives us more opportunity to do further processing. And then down here, the pre-delay is hiding. Of course, the pre-delay is the amount of time it takes before you hear the first reflections of the reverb. And you can use that as a rhythmic slapback. It can be very cool. You can use it for a little moment of dryness before the wetness comes on and occurs. And you can even use it as a thickener with short pre-delay times, almost like a flammy kind of thing. Can be very cool. Your analyzer can show you, you can turn it off. It could be pre or and post or reverb and post. And it's got this beautiful, dreamy reverb decay metering that's beautiful. Of course, I would expect nothing less from FabFilter because they have great controls, great sound, and always a wonderful aesthetic sense, which makes them wonderful and a pleasure to work on. Probably the most other significant thing to take note of here are the two other things that are in your face, which is the decay rate EQ and the post EQ. Now, the decay rate EQ gives you the ability to control the decay within a certain frequency zone or spectrum. And these shapes are typical. You have a bell shape response, you have shelves, and also you have a notch. So what this does is as you move this around, and you can add as many instances as you like, you can emphasize or lengthen or shorten the decay within a certain frequency selection. And you can change the shapes as we see here. If you want to change the Q, you can two-finger scroll on a Mac, and this changes the Q as well. So you have all kinds of control over the shape of the decay within your selected frequency range and your shape, and you can emphasize it up to 200% or increase it rather up to 200% or down as much as 12%. So it's sort of not symmetrical there, but that's the way it is designed. And this allows you to have longer decays on the low end to warm something up, to have shorter decays on the high end to naturalize things. Most spaces don't really have lots of high frequency decay. And take out the middle, which might be mud or too much traffic in the mid-range, or emphasize it for more warmth, depending on the sound. So that is your decay rate EQ, completely innovative and very easy to use, completely visual and all the rest. Now, the final thing that they're inviting you by this design to tweak is the post EQ. And usually we have these post EQs that are small and claustrophobic, and they're hidden somewhere under some little, tweak mode hood, and they feel tiny and you get carpal tunnel syndrome moving them around. This is not that. This is from the people who brought us beautiful, visual, clear, easy to see EQ. So now we have that EQ in our reverb, which invites you to use it, right? That's what I said at the beginning. One of the biggest problems people have with getting their reverbs really, really precise and their ambiences precise and to allow them to relate is they're scared of editing because editing has been so sciencey. So now it invites you to play with it. You can do all kinds of things. If you're pushing the decay in one zone, You could emphasize that tonality, or you could de-emphasize it to sort of equalize it and balance it. You know, if you want to make something more poppy, you might want to brighten up the highs in the post EQ and make it more glossy and shiny. Or you might want to make it darker and more natural. And if you pull the EQ or create an instance here, it automatically intelligently knows it's a shelf. So with all of that being said, let's play with this thing. You start with the basic, which is here, and sort of zeroes you out. The basic is not the default. The default is here, which already has some decay EQ and some post EQ, which is cool. But I think it's better to start with the basic, and let's have some fun. I have here a dry Apple loop, so you can try this at home if you have Logic. And first we'll just listen to it dry. I'm going to bypass the reverb. I have it set up here on a auxiliary track. And here is the dry lead. And there's nothing more sad than a dry lead in the world, right? Nothing is more sad than a lead that has no room to play in. Very, very sad. So let's give it some reverb. I'm going to I'll start here with a send of, well, -3, which is probably more than you would do in a mix, but it all depends. And let's give this a test drive here with all these fun tweakable controls. First, we'll just check out the different spaces, and then we'll just tweak it out a little bit and have some fun. And you can hear the character wasn't totally obvious on this one. I've had other sounds that I played with where it was much more obviously chorusy, and of course we can tweak it out as well with our EQs. But the distance you can hear, you hear those late reflections, the build up, those bassy late reflections when you go too far. And when you're near, you hear more of a bright early reflection response. Okay, so let's play with a little bit of stereo mix, and then let's jump right in and start to have a little bit of fun with this decay rate EQ. And you have to love that beautiful smoke over the mountaintop visual. Right, so lots of different tonal controls with the Decay in different frequency zones, making it warmer, making it brighter, making it darker, making it thinner. And now let's play with the post EQ finally, just to see what it is. The post EQ, the response is a little more dramatic. It's sort of your final word on your reverb sound, and it gives you quite a bit of control, actually. And really, the possibilities are completely endless. And you can just go crazy having fun, really getting the tone of your reverb to reflect whatever you want to happen in that moment. And one of the things I love to do with FabFilter is, because the presets are so intelligently put together, is I love to look at the presets and kind of reverse engineer them. Also, I think a lot of these would make really good t-shirts. What's a good t-shirt? Not that one. Maybe that one. I think that would, this is called Artificial Cinematic Space. I think that could make a beautiful t-shirt or a beautiful painting. But it also gives you some ideas of how the designers, on a serious note, how the designers are thinking about the use of the post EQ and the decay rate EQ and how they can work together. So you kind of get some insight as to what they thought was cool. Here's some very interesting looking comb filtered presets. And again, it looks like high art that I would, like to see in a big gallery. But it also shows you that where they're notching some of the decay rate EQ, they're giving little boosts to achieve this effect with the post EQ. So just getting some cool ideas of how these two things work together. Thank you, FabFilter, for putting this out. I will certainly be using this. I think it will encourage me to have much more fun adjusting the decay and the post EQ in my reverbs. And I think it sounds beautiful. It has a beautiful sound. I think it's capable of very dark, warm, natural sounds, but also some very poppy, bright, shiny sounds as well. A beautiful design, beautiful package, great sound. That's what FabFilter does. Thank you, Pro R. I'm sure that I will be using this in my freelance work, and that we'll be using this quite a bit at the school to get the cutting edge sound. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. We'll keep them coming. Go to mixmasterwyatt.com. We have all kinds of courses, self-study video courses, courses with teachers, all kinds of shootout workshops, millions of courses for the up-and-coming producers all over the world, and I'll see you online.